Hey guys, I'm Donna, an online therapist from talkfeelchange.com, and today I want to speak about a very important term that I think gets thrown around quite a lot without people fully understanding exactly what it means. And that term is learned helplessness. And I think that the best way to explain learned helplessness is through an example. Now, way back when it was still ethical to do some seriously horrendous experiments on animals, a researcher from the University of Pennsylvania called Martin Seligman conducted a series of experiments on dogs. Thankfully, this experiment couldn't be done today, but the findings are still relevant. And so what he did is he took 3 groups of dogs, and the first group were the most unfortunate. They were put into a cage that they couldn't escape from, and then they were administered a series of very painful electric shocks. Now remember, they couldn't escape from these shocks. The second group of dogs were also put into a cage, but they just had to pull a lever in order to escape. And so they were able to escape when they were also administered the electric shocks. And the third group of dogs were a control group who were lucky enough to not be given any electric shocks. Okay? And then all 3 groups were put in cages that were very easy to escape from. They just had a small little wall that the dogs just had to jump over very easily. And then again, they were all given electric shocks. And what the researchers found was when the dogs who had never been given the electric shocks before, as well as the ones who had previously been able to escape, when they were now given these electric shocks, they just immediately jumped over the small wall and escaped the shocks. But the dogs who were in the inescapable cage in the beginning, when they were now administered these electric shocks, even though they just had to jump over that small wall to escape the shocks, the researchers found that they didn't even try to escape. They had, in effect, learned to be helpless from their past experience. Now we can relate this experiment to people, and when we do that, we start to understand why people who have been in severe difficulties or traumas that they've had no control over, why they start to feel helpless in their situation. And sometimes we believe that there's nothing that we can do to make our situation better. And if we believe this for long enough, even when an option for relief or for a positive change does come about, people don't necessarily take it because they've learned to feel that helplessness, to feel that nothing they can do will change the situation. After a very difficult or traumatic incident, we often end up losing the idea that we can change things. And we might experience a lot of intrusive, pessimistic thinking like, nothing I do will be good enough, and I can't change this situation, or this will never get better. Now, a little bit of good news about learned helplessness is that a lot of it is centered around an incorrect perception. Just like the dogs who believed that they couldn't escape the later shocks, that we know that they just had to jump over that small wall, and it was only their perception that they couldn't escape these. It can be similar with people, and if we learn to change our thinking and change our perception of the situation, we might be able to move towards taking more positive changes. Now, unlearning learned helplessness is not necessarily an easy thing, and in that experiment that I spoke about with the dogs, the researchers found that when they were put into the cage with the small wall that they had to just jump over, when the researchers tried to encourage these dogs to jump over the wall or even offer them treats, the dogs didn't budge. And in fact, the researchers had to physically pick the dogs up and move them to show them that they could actually escape the shocks. And the researchers had to do that at least twice for each dog before the dog slowly realized and learned that they could escape the shocks themselves. Now, many of us experience learned helplessness in a number of ways on a daily basis. And the first step, which is a really important step, is to start to become aware of when you are experiencing this learned helplessness and when you're experiencing these negative, intrusive thoughts. And once you've learned to become aware of these thoughts, then you can start to challenge them. And a good way of starting to challenge them is by considering something your biggest cheerleader would say. The person who sees the best in you and like really, really believes in you. And this person could be in your life now, or it could even be a person from your childhood who just saw you and just knew that there was a lot of good inside of you. And you can start challenging these thoughts by saying, what would this cheerleader say? Would they accept that nothing could get better? Or would they know that there was something about you that could help you to overcome that situation? Now, I know this is a lot easier said than done, and it may be a slow, gradual process. And if you do find that you're struggling a bit more with it than you thought, you could always try therapy. And just like the dogs needed the researchers to physically pick them up and carry them over the wall at least 2 or 3 times in order for them to process and learn that they can do this themselves later, it's similar with a good therapist. Sometimes you need someone to show you that you can do it and that it is possible and help you to create those positive changes in your life. If you do feel like you and I would work well together therapeutically, then you can contact me or book a session at talkfeelchange.com.